it can feel religious with, God or Jesus or angels or spirits or trees or the universe. People talk about these things in so many different ways. And you can also kind of shape it into whatever is comfortable for you. Like if you don't feel comfortable, maybe speaking to yourself, you can speak to God or to some kind of like guardian angel that you feel like you have in your life. And you can pretend like you're speaking to someone else, but really these are the words that you want to speak to yourself. Because it feels silly. Like even, I don't know, haven't like talked to my roommates about, I'm like kissing my knees in the shower. Like, okay, that's kind of strange, but I know that makes me feel like, it makes me feel nice. Like it makes me feel loved.
Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot.
Post-pandemic, it feels as though our social skills have atrophied.
It feels like the barrier to entry to meeting new people and cultivating community is higher than ever before, but we believe that meaningful relationships are the key to a fulfilling life.
So we're ditching the surface level conversations to ask and answer questions all about human connection. Join us in creating something more human.
Instead of starting with your origin story and how Raw Rebellious has come to be the successful and inspiring brand that it is, we want to talk about who you are aside from what you do and your relationships and how they are. What do they look like? How could they be better? What have you learned? How can you inspire people who listen to this that want to cultivate, maintain, and improve their relationships? And from the research that we've done, we know that you were forthcoming about certain things related to self that many might say are quite vulnerable topics. In our episode with Dan Harris, he mentioned this phrase, cathartic normalization, which is to say there's some service you can do by talking about the difficult, potentially embarrassing stuff. It gives other people who are listening permission to do the same, which we talked a little bit about on your podcast. In your episode with Anna Sesbaugh, who we've also had on our show, you talked about self-image and about how your mom was starting to become critical of her appearance as she ages. And then you spoke about your own experience and how you've criticized the way you looked in the past. I'm wondering if you can talk about those experiences and if you've learned to accept yourself, how you did so, and how has that path affected your friendships, your romantic relationships, and your familial relationships. A little icebreaker, no big deal.
Whoa. Okay, serious mic drop.
Yeah.
Also, total sidebar, you sound like you belong on NPR. Like that's what your voice is giving me, NPR.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you can
it's
practice
positive.
You can practice your phone sex operation with me only.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't get into that today. Because we've been told many things about our voices, like we were saying earlier.
Talk to us about the self-image, where you are now with that.
Well, I told you guys, I'm turning 30 this week. So I've been,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So I've been very retrospective, and I love to journal and think deeply on things. And normally a birthday ritual of mine is going on a hike by myself and just literally thinking through like each month of the last year, hard things that I went through, what I learned from them. I just love all that stuff. It's how I like to spend my day. And I want to, with this podcast, similarly to how y'all were saying, you feel like it's helped your marriage and your relationship has changed, but for the better, and you're learning so much more about each other, and it feels like a new chapter. For me with podcasting, I try to take my own life experiences that I'm normally just living, and I'm like, okay, well, how can I explain this or give advice on this or describe this in a way that's helpful to someone? So I've been thinking a lot about, the cliche, what I've learned in my 20s. And it's funny because self and body image are two huge things that I've grown through and learned so much about. I think about like graduating college and, starting my 20s. And one thing that I talked about in this little like brain dump was the inner child piece of when I watch home videos. My family has like so many home videos every holiday when I go home where we all sit around and watch them. And there's been so many times in my life, as so many women and men deal with, where you're so self-critical. You're looking at the mirror and you're really self-conscious about certain things, or you harp on certain things about yourself and you let it get to your core and like your worth of who you are and what you put out, even though other people probably don't notice those things anyway. Sometimes the physical can be really overwhelming. And one thing that really helped me was when I looked in the mirror, rather than having that negative self-talk and looking at myself, I thought of like looking at my younger self, like my inner child. Because the concept that like when you look at these baby pictures that you are that baby is like a whole other concept in itself. And thinking of looking at that little girl, like running around, twirling in her dresses, like playing outside and telling her like, oh, like your stomach pokes out, or like you don't look good in this outfit, or I don't like your hair, or you're breaking out and like that looks bad. Like I would never say that to a little girl. And I still am that little girl. I'm a huge proponent of serving your inner child and always thinking of ways to, incorporate play and fun into your life, because I think at our core, a lot of us really crave that. So long story long, I think that inner child self-talk has really helped me over the years. And it's something that I struggled with in my mid-20s. And then the same thing, like I talked about with Anna, watching my mom talk negatively about herself. I was like, like I've never looked at her and thought those things about her. Like I see her as my mom, as this like beautiful, amazing being. And same with my friends. And the cliche, like talk to yourself like you talk to your best friend type of thing. Like, would you say that to your friend? And I think that's so true, because you don't look at your friends and you're like, ugh, like you look a little more swollen today than you did before. And I'm using body because that was something that I really struggled with for a long time, was like accepting my body for what it is. And like these like guilt and obsession cycles that go along with that, with food and with working out. And so that also helped me, that moment where my mom was talking negatively about her own body. And I was thinking about her, like, I hate that she's saying that about herself, because like I see her as this incredibly strong, inspiring woman that I look up to, and that like I don't even think about what her body looks like. I think about like who she is to her core, and all of our memories and experiences together, and what we will experience together. And so I think that helped me put it into perspective too, where I'm like, because no one's looking at me and thinking that like I'm different than I used to look, or I'm not fitting into the same clothes, or I'm not a certain size, or I look more bloated today than I did the day before. I mean, our bodies are ever changing. And I think that's something with age, people talk about, your like body's least interesting thing about you, which I think is true, but it's hard as a woman to conceptualize that, because with social media and also with having like a presence on social media, you're showing up so often and you're having to show yourself. And then the thought of like, oh, what if people meet me? And when they meet me, they don't think I look the same that I do online. There's just so many things that can get in your head with this new age of technology and comparison. So it's hard to think that your body is the least interesting thing about you, even though it's true. So I think if anyone out there is struggling, or, is having a moment where they're not feeling great about themselves, or they're using interactions with, men or women or whoever you're attracted to as a baseboard of like what their worth is. Like if they're not feeling attractive to other people, sometimes that can also kind of get in your head. And I always try to come back to like that little girl and think about her, and what would I tell her if she was standing right in front of me, and like these thoughts that I'm having about myself, like would I ever say that out loud to my younger self?
Elliot, what does that make you think?
I was going to ask you, it's not like challenging you because it sounds kind of rash. Like it's one thing to say, but like, how do you think we as humans, or how have you made sure that you remind yourself of that in the moment that it does happen? Like, is it easier for you to sort of commit to saying, okay, like I am going to think about myself as that little girl whenever I do feel like I'm looking in the mirror and not seeing what I like, because I relate to that pretty heavily, but I've thought about it every now and then, like, to be kinder to my younger self, or to be kind in the way that I'd be kind to a friend. But I think what's interesting is, I think because I've been so critical of myself, like the way that I look, that critical observation, then I become critical of other people.
And you notice the thing that you're insecure about maybe in other people.
Right.
Okay.
And so that is pretty heavy, right? Because we're saying like, you and Anna were saying like, oh, we don't really notice that. And it's not that I don't know, I do notice it, but it's not like I'm judging.
Right.
But I do notice it.
You
so
take
then
note.
So then I'm thinking, okay, if like I notice it, then that means they're probably noticing it.
Yep.
And then they're going to notice what I notice, and what I notice, I can't stand to look at.
Right.
So like, have you thought about that, or have you dealt with that, or are you thinking now like, oh, I've actually, maybe I am more critical of other people when I'm more critical of myself, or is that not really something that happens for you?
I relate to that. Yeah. When I think about that, I think of two things. One is, yes, I do notice that. Like if there are certain things that I'm self-conscious of, I notice both ways. I notice if someone has like an absence of that thing, or I notice if someone also has the same thing that I have that I'm self-conscious about. And then that goes into the thought process of, which I mean, part of this is noticing your thoughts, right? Is giving it space and realizing that that's okay that you're thinking that. Like, don't be self-critical. Like, everyone has thoughts and you can't control them. So give them the space and then you can validate them and kind of let them pass. So I think number one is just noticing when you have that self-talk. Like you said, like it's so easy to say, oh, just think about, the little girl, but you're not, like, you have to be aware that you're even in that thought pattern. And one thing with, thinking about other people is I 100% have thought about other people. I'm not saying that I like look at everyone and I'm not internally judgmental or that I don't have these, thought patterns that I've learned long ago or that I'm self-conscious about and I'm letting it out, towards other people. But then I also think about when you were saying that, like, when I do notice that about someone else, like if it's something that I'm insecure about, I'm still bringing it back to me. So I'm not looking at them and like thinking, oh, they're less than, or like they have this and they aren't beautiful, or like judging like their appearance. If we're talking about appearance, it's more so it reminds me of what I'm insecure about. And then if I really think about it, to your point of, oh gosh, like I'm noticing this, so other people can notice it about me too. Like, are they thinking the same thing about me? But then I think about how quickly I brought it back to myself again. And I'm like, okay, even if they were thinking about me, and people are judgmental all the time. We were talking on our episode of like caring about what people think, and people will have negative thoughts about you, and that's out of your control. And number one, that's like, I've always tried to tell myself, like, that's none of my business. Like, they can think whatever they want to think. And number two, those negative thought patterns always reflect back to that person still. Everything always comes back to our ego, and that's just human. Like, we are always thinking about ourselves. And I think part of that is like a survival mechanism from, a billion years ago. But so I try to always remind myself of that when I'm being critical of myself, when I'm worried about what other people are thinking, is, whatever they're thinking about me is none of my business and it can't affect me. And it probably reflects more so back to like something with them that I can't control. And the second thing is, as far as like tangible things that you can do when you're being self-critical is, talking out loud to yourself. I think that's a really great thing. We were talking about the importance of journaling earlier. And I think the same with therapy, where sometimes when I've journaled, I don't know if y'all felt this way, but I'll find myself like lying or sugarcoating things in my journal. And then I am like, okay, sorry, I don't know why I wrote it like that. Actually, what happened is this. And I'm like actually really insecure about this, or I'm really embarrassed by this. And I don't know why I do that. And I catch myself doing it, but I've caught myself in therapy too, like sugarcoating things to my therapist. And I'm like, I'm literally paying her to listen to me and help me. And I'm lying to her for what? And I think that's the importance of like, time spent alone or time spent in introspection, is like learning more about yourself and what makes you tick and what your insecurities are, because we're all imperfect. But I think just being aware of that and like giving it space and then trying to combat it is the first step maybe towards living a more, I don't want to say judgment free, because I think we'll always all have judgment towards others, but like maybe understanding for ourselves and like empathy for ourselves, like where it's coming from, and not being so harsh, like, oh, why are you thinking that? Like, stop. Like, or why do I think this about myself? Or why am I thinking that about this other person? It's like tracing it back. Like, okay, well, why do I feel this way? Why is this like triggering to me? If someone has something that I don't, or someone has something that I also struggle with, like, why is that like bothering me so much?
Sarah, I'm kind of hearing you say like, it's not necessarily, oh, I should stop thinking this way. So how do I just totally wipe those thoughts from the face of the planet? But like, when those things naturally come up, how do I practice mindfulness in noticing the thought pattern and then take that thought pattern and redirect it, like shifting towards the person in front of the mirror, towards like my 8-year-old self.
Right.
Elliot, I would love to hear more from you around like, why did you ask this question and how are you feeling about Sarah's response so far?
Well, I'm trying not to like make this episode about me. It was just when we were doing research on you, that part really stuck out to me, especially like thinking about like us as humans and as we age. Like you were talking about your mom. First of all, I think it's great that you have a good relationship with your mom and that you were able to sort of have that conversation and maybe even be that good mirror for her. Like I feel like now that's kind of your duty.
Right.
Because I don't know, I think stress is also more difficult, and like judging ourselves is also much more difficult when we're older, right? Our bodies just can't really take that as much as they used to. So that was just the thing that really stuck out to me, was thinking that, and I think that you and I talked about this yesterday, like it's not going to get, I'm not saying that I'm not going to get more handsome or you're not going to get more beautiful or you're not going to get more beautiful, but like naturally we will degrade.
We age.
So
yeah.
if it's difficult now, like just imagine how much more difficult it will be later on. And so like how much of a duty it is to be that mirror, like how much of a duty it is to be a mirror for you. And in that way, like if we were talking about on her podcast, like you have to do things for yourself, but also like maybe it's best for me to do that part for you. If I can't not judge myself for me, then I have to realize like I need to not judge myself for you, because when I judge myself, it's very easy for me to be critical of you. And it has nothing to do with you. It's all about me. You know what I mean? So that's where that mirror comes in. So that was just the most fascinating thing that I listened to and I consumed while doing research for Sarah. That's kind of why I brought it up, because I feel like we could relate in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you think that like taking that perspective to heart, being more reflective and thinking more about like that home video version of yourself has shifted or changed or altered your relationships or the way that you interact with the people around you?
That's a good question. I would say back to what Elliot was saying, with sometimes the things that you feel about yourself can manifest in negative ways towards other people, and you find yourself treating other people in maybe a negative way just based on what you're going through, you're having a bad day, your insecurities. And I think once I had that realization, and also moving out to Colorado, because I didn't know anyone when I moved here, which I wanted because I kind of wanted to start fresh and really figure out who I was, because I felt like we were talking about earlier, I was wearing different masks and I was performing in different ways, and I just didn't really know what the real me was. And that also came with lots of alone time, because you're, meeting new people, making friends, and that takes a really long time. So I wanted to kind of decide who I wanted to be in this new place. And it was the first time I felt like I had the autonomy to choose like who I wanted to introduce myself as, almost. And so with that realization of self, and then also, which like comes with time, like that's something that I'm constantly trying to notice and be more present with and work on, also comes the realization of how you treat other people. And I did exactly that. Like I remember, years ago, living in Atlanta I also lived with 5 girls, and I'm always living with a billion people. And like one of my roommates would be getting ready, and this was like at the peak of like my insecurity and just like not feeling great about myself. And my friend would look amazing, and she'd be standing in front of me. She's like, "What do you think about this outfit?" And rather than being like, "Oh my God, you look amazing," I'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's cute." Like I wouldn't really say much. And I thought on that, and I'm like, why was I trying to like diminish her excitement or her beauty or her self-confidence? Does that help me or make me feel better? Absolutely not. If anything, that makes me feel worse. So what I started doing, and I remember journaling about this when I moved out here, was anytime I was feeling really bad about myself, or I was like jealous or envious of what someone else had, I would make sure to like go out of my way to like compliment them or say it out loud and like recognize it. Like you're crushing it, or, "Oh my God, that dress looks amazing on you," or like, and make it nothing about me. And that would make me feel better. And that would be me like actively trying to work a muscle against like projecting that negativity. So I think that helped a lot. And then back to the self, another tangible thing that really helped me too is trying to like compliment myself and love myself and like almost like hold myself in like a nurturing way when I wasn't feeling my best. And I mean, I'm a woman at different times of the month, my body shifts and it changes, and that's constant. That's something that I've just learned, especially on the days where I'm feeling like a little different or my clothes are fitting a little different and nothing's changed. I will in the shower, like when I'm like putting body wash on, I'll try to like hold my body and be like, "I love you, like you're beautiful." And that sounds silly, but the weirdest thing that I'll do is my mom, this is like so fucking weird. I've never talked about this, but my mom will, like when she kisses me, she'll like kiss my head and she'll kind of like breathe me in for a second. She's always done that. And she's like, "I'm breathing you in." Like when I was little, I was like, "Get away." And she's like, "I'm breathing you in." And so sometimes if I'm like feeling like not great and I'm in the shower, I also love to like sit in the shower. It's really fucking weird. I will like kiss my shoulder and I'll kind of like breathe myself in kind of like my mom does. And it's like a very self-nurturing thing. And it just like slows me down for a second. It reminds me that like I love my body. I have a very capable body. Like these are all the things I get to do with my body. And like, you know, kind of like, okay, positive affirmation, that kind of thing. And I do that too with like sport. Like I tore my ACL when I first moved out here. And so with my knee, I'll like literally like before I ski, I'll like touch my knee, I'll kiss my knees, both of them. And I'm like, you guys are strong. You guys are great. Like, let's fucking get after it, that kind of thing. And that just helps me like bring more love into my body and also like call out those kind of subconscious feelings that you were talking about of like, how do you even notice that and combat that?
What would you tell a skeptic?
I would tell them that I think it takes time. Similar to a lot of things we've been talking about, it's like a practice. So it seems silly and it feels funny and there's, you know, it's different for everyone. But having these private moments with yourself and these like practices, I think help you slowly start to love yourself more, because so many things that you say can sound like a cliche, especially for the girl listening that's, you know, single or feeling lonely or not feeling wanted, or you know, they want love or they want a relationship in a romantic sense and it just feels like unattainable. And people are like, oh, well, you have to love yourself. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to love myself when I don't feel like anyone loves me? And people oftentimes like they invalidate that by saying, but you have your family and you have your friends and you have all these people that love you. And it's like, yes, but that fills a different cup than romantic love. And we can all recognize that.
Sure.
And I think that's what's really hard too, is people say you have to love yourself before you can love someone else and like be in a relationship. But it's like, well, how do I do that if I don't have someone else telling me that I'm lovable, and like finding that within yourself? So these little practices of like self-love, so to speak, I think just over time you grow that respect and appreciation for yourself on your quote unquote bad days and on the days where you feel incredible and you're like glowing.
Can I also answer that question?
Of course. Yeah.
I feel the same way about answering this for skepticism, the way I feel about like skepticism around manifestation, which is, what does it cost you to try?
Oh man, we're on the same wavelength, dude.
Like what do you have to lose by trying? And if it doesn't work, you're in the same place and you've lost nothing.
Yes.
And if it does work, well, what if it does work?
Maybe we're beating the same old drum because we talk about it so much, but I think it's because it's really important. But several weeks ago, or it's been a while, at the park when we had a conversation with your mom.
Several weeks ago.
Several months.
That was months
and months ago. Basically, it was like I was noticing that all of these small things that were adding up, like, you know, getting frustrated in the car, you know, in front of someone that's slow, or like a red light taking too long, or being in a long grocery store line. And I was realizing like all of those things were adding up, all those small things that you're talking about, like kissing yourself and touching your knees, like those are small things. Some people might think like those are very woo-woo, like how can you even prove that works?
Right.
But to me, you can, if you look at the opposite. If you're constantly like talking shit to yourself,
yes,
and you're constantly reacting in this way, it's inevitable that your like that energy will affect your life. And so like to Sam's point, I just had this like epiphany at the park. And so for like the next couple of weeks, I'd like, you know, I commanded myself, like, I am not going to react in the way that I normally do to see how my life will change. And my life was immediately better right away. And so like, to me, you're like, what do I have to lose by doing these very small things? And I was a skeptic for, you know, 32 years of my life.
Totally.
Right? But I think it's hard to like, you know, make people who don't believe in energy believe in energy. But of course, speaking to yourself and talking to yourself in the mirror and telling yourself that you love yourself, of course, that's not going to have negative effects.
Right.
So like, what can it cost you? The words that come out of your mouth eventually will lead to something.
Right.
And if they're always negative, well, of course your life is going to reflect that. And so I haven't got back on that train quite yet. I don't know what happened, but it definitely changed. So like, what will it cost you? Nothing.
Well, and for skeptics, I mean, people talk about these ideas in different ways, right? Like spirituality, like it can feel religious. It can feel with, you know, God or Jesus or angels or spirits or trees or the universe. You know, I mean, people talk about these things in so many different ways. And you can also kind of shape it into whatever is comfortable for you. Like if you don't feel comfortable, you know, maybe speaking to yourself, you can speak to God or to some kind of like guardian angel that you feel like you have in your life. And you can pretend like you're speaking to someone else, but really these are the words that you want to speak to yourself. Because it feels silly. Like even, I don't know, haven't like talked to my roommates about, you know, I'm like kissing my knees in the shower. Like, okay, that's kind of strange, but I know that makes me feel like, it makes me feel nice. Like it makes me feel loved. And I have so much love in my life. And so it kind of channels that back in, that like feeling that I got when I was little, like my mom breathing me in on my head, you know? And, you know, things feeling silly. It's like, don't take yourself so seriously. Like you can do whatever you want. Nothing matters anyway. Like do the silly thing, do what feels goofy. Like look at yourself in the mirror and talk out loud and point out all the things that you're insecure about. And then maybe talk to yourself, be like, okay, like, you know, this extra like little like lump on my hip or something, or like my stomach sticking out. Okay, well there's organs in there. So that's like a little silly, and like call yourself out a little bit. Like it doesn't have to be so serious, and you can try different things. Journaling might not be for you, but maybe going for a walk and talking to yourself is, or like dancing, you know, in the mornings without a mirror around, just so you can like move your body and like get that energy out. Like there's so many ways that you can practice self-care and that you can practice loving yourself, and it works different for anyone. And like, you know, what do you have to lose? It's not going to negatively affect you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This is kind of going off an idea that we talk about sometimes in the context of entrepreneurship, which is like, try it, fail at it, do better the next time. The same goes for here. If you start talking to yourself and you realize that it's not for you, how can you shape and sculpt it for your own life and the way that you want to be in community with yourself? And you won't know until you try. I love it. And I also love that you said, like, it doesn't have to be so serious. Like, there are no rules is something I've started saying. So speaking of no rules, I know that you moved to Denver, but you had a couple of places that you wanted to move. And the reason that you picked Denver was because you knew no one.
Yes. Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about like, why did you pick the one place of your options that you did not know anybody? And how did that work out kind of maybe in the first year?
I think I chose it because I was trying to like escape a version of myself. I have loved every chapter of my life, and I think I've grown and changed a lot over the years. And when I think about who I was in college and like post-college, I was like the party girl that like went out and took all the shots and stayed out the latest and was always down for anything. And I felt very pulled in a million different directions, and I didn't really feel like I had a ton of autonomy in my life because I lived in a place where all of my college friends were, all of my like people from high school, and that people that have always known me in like different phases of my life. So I never really like gotten that fresh slate. And I was just craving autonomy, really. I felt trapped in plans that were being made for me versus like getting to choose and do what I want. So when I thought about moving somewhere, I was looking at a bunch of different places. One criteria I had was I can't make drinking at bars my entire hobby and personality. I have to like find a hobby or do something because like this is not fulfilling to me. And so Denver was appealing because we have the mountains here. And I hadn't really ever skied before. I wasn't very outdoorsy, but I was like, okay, well, this is like something I could try. And I liked the idea of going somewhere where I didn't know anyone, and I wasn't like immediately put in like a friend group. Like I had the autonomy to choose who I wanted to be friends with and choose who I wanted to spend time with, or if I didn't want to hang out with anyone. Like the thought of waking up on a Saturday and getting to like not do anything because no one was like dragging me around, because like I said, I lived with 5 girls when I lived in Atlanta. I never really had like peace. And I think that's what I was really craving. And so that's why I chose Denver, was the mix of like all the activities that were to be had that I wanted to try, and also just the vastness of not knowing anyone. And I have always had very positive experiences when I've moved. I mean, I definitely think finding community can be really hard. I've been so lucky where anywhere I've gone, I've used the tools that I have of like, okay, I know other people in other parts of the world. Surely someone knows someone that lives in Denver. Like, I'm just going to tell everyone that I'm moving, talk about it to everyone. And someone has a cousin that lives here. Someone has a friend that lives here. Okay. Oh, you do know someone that lives here? Could you put us in a group text and like tell them that I'm living here, and then maybe like they would hang out with me at some point? And that's really how I made all my friends, was just through other random mutual friends and connections that I had. And they weren't all forever friends, but I meet one person and then they're having a party at their house the next weekend, or they're going to a tailgate and they're like, oh, you can come. And I just became like a yes man. I'm like, yes, I will go to all of these things so I can just try a bunch of different things. And we were talking about that earlier too, of like how exhausting it can be. At the end of the day, you're like, oh, like I don't want to go get drinks with someone. I don't want to go to a random dinner and have to again, like, perform, as we put it. And because when you're meeting new people, you are performing because you're like really exerting a ton of energy. You're trying to get to know that person. It's not like an easy thing to do. And as an adult, it can just be so daunting and overwhelming. But I feel like I kind of made that my mission of like, I'm just going to try a bunch of different things, a bunch of different activities, and I'm going to try to meet as many people as possible and just put myself out there, because I do know myself. And as much as I love spending time alone, I love it when it's my choice. So if I feel like I'm alone because I don't have any other options and I don't want to be alone, then that's when I start getting lonely
Sure.
or scared. And knowing that about myself, I think that's why I put forth such like a earnest effort early on, was because I wanted to make sure that I was making those connections with people that I craved. And it was also kind of a fast track for me to like test out, like, okay, you're going to a party and you don't know a single person. Like, good luck in there. Like, you're going to have to just walk up to random groups of people and say like, hi, I'm Sarah,
Yeah.
which as an adult was scary for me too, because I went to college, was in a sorority, all that. So I always had all these like built-in friends. So I think that also fast tracked me figuring out like who I wanted to be when I moved here, when I was introducing myself.
Right.
Did you feel like you lacked the skills initially to do that, like basically cold pitch, like, hello, I don't know anybody here. I'm Sarah. Would you like to talk to me for the next 5 minutes? Because you had those built-in friendships, like school, sorority, the ways that you were kind of naturally engaging with the world.
That's interesting that you're saying, did you feel like you lacked them? Because it's funny you're saying that, because I was thinking
the opposite.
Yeah, like actually did you build the skills by being in the sorority, by being constantly surrounded by people where you were always forced to be speaking to somebody,
I think it's probably a little bit of both, because I had the awareness piece of, I know that a lot of these friends, I didn't have to go out of my way to make. They were kind of given to me.
Right.
But which also came into play of like, I didn't really know who I was in college. Like I was laughing with a friend about this the other night, like didn't really have a sense of style, didn't have a sense of self. And I wasn't aware of that, but it was fine because I was having the best time. But I was just kind of put in these groups. And I mean, some of them are still my best friends to this day. But they were kind of just given to me, similarly to like when I was in high school and in different friend groups. Like I never really had to work very hard for those, because there was always like a mutual, or we're both taking geometry, or we're all like kind of like in the same like little lane. So yes, like it was abnormal for me to have to do that. But I also, like, I've traveled a bunch by myself, where I like go over to Europe and I go to hostels and I travel with different groups of people, or just completely alone and make friends along the way. And I think those experiences taught me a lot before I came here, because I've still done that since then. But going somewhere completely alone and having like almost like a like surplus of autonomy can be a little overwhelming. And it's the same thing of walking up to people and having to do that. But in those situations, everyone's trying to meet someone, because it's like, if you've ever been to a hostel, it's a ton of solo travelers that are more used to that.
Right.
And so I did find it, terrifying going to these gatherings and going to these parties and like trying to convince someone essentially to like want to get to know me, right? Because they already have all their friends. But we also live in a place, like I feel like Denver, we have the advantage because so many people do move here and it's such a transplant city. So people are a bit more open, like, oh, well, I was there, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. Like, yeah, like come hang out with me and my friends. I feel like I've had that experience more often than I've had someone being more standoffish to me.
I'm hearing a tangible tip being, even if your network may not be close to you, tapping into your network to expand it.
Yes.
Something that you and I have talked about, Sam, in our phases of life moving from Albuquerque to Denver, I remember like taking a drive to Hemis to go hiking, thinking like, oh, I could live in this really small town someday. And Sam's like, I don't see myself doing that, at least right now. And then we moved to Denver to make more friends, and then thinking like, there's so many people in Denver, it'll be easy to make friends because there's such a vast pool of people to make friends with. But now that you've moved to a city you've moved from a city that essentially had 500,000 plus people to a town that has less than 5,000. Did you have that mindset, like that it would be easier to make friends in such a small town, or that it would be more difficult to make friends in a small town? What was your impetus for moving to such a small town, and how has your network changed, or how has your relationship to your sociality of your being changed moving to such a small place?
That's a good question. Well, I think with my more recent moves, I've been in the mindset of I have so many like very deep soul friendships that we have friends that we've had since we were younger. We have friends that we've made in adult life. They're all very different, but they serve the purposes for me that I need. Like I know that I have someone to call in pretty much every situation, which I'm very lucky to have. And I've kind of cultivated those friendships over the years. So when I move, my goal is less like, okay, I need to find like a best friend here. It's more so because with Breckenridge where I live, what's nice is we talked about our communities and like the goal being the commonality of, oh, you listen to something more human. So you must then also have similar ideals to me. And so then you must also, we can connect on this level. I feel like living in a smaller town like Breckenridge, because it is concentrated with the activities of like, oh, we all moved here to like play outside. We all moved here because we love skiing or we love hiking or mountain biking or rock climbing, or we're like escaping something or we're looking for something. And so you have that commonality. So the connections almost come easier because there's less people, but it's less people, but I find that it's the quality of people is for this phase of my life exactly what I want. Like it's adventure buddies and like, people are always planning like rafting trips and hut trips and trying to skip out on work early to go ski, or like that priority of like living your life I've really enjoyed. And so I've been lucky with my roommates. I didn't know a lot of them before I moved in, and like they're now some of my best friends, and that wasn't necessarily something I was expecting. I was okay with if they're just like my roommates for this period of time, like as long as we don't hate each other, like this is great. But I've been lucky to find those like very soulful friendships and like deeper connections. But I also have a lot of friends who are more just like going out friends or like touring friends, or a friend that can show me like rock climbing or something because they have the equipment and I don't, to try something new with. So I also feel like in different chapters of my life, I'm looking for different things maybe in my friends. And so the expectation there isn't always the same for like what I'm going to get out of a friendship. Because some of the people from Summit who are so much fun, like when I leave, I probably won't stay in touch with. And it's not because I don't like them. It's because our connection is more what's going on right now.
Right.
And what our common interests are right now.
Right.
But like, I don't really see myself like, becoming next door neighbors and like having kids at the same, like that kind of connection, I guess.
Do you find yourself like compared to living in Denver, for example, where there's a similar amount of people who are interested in doing outdoor activities? Do you find yourself just around more people doing more things with your community living in Breckenridge?
Yes. Because I think Denver can sometimes it's portrayed, my roommates and I were just talking about this, more like Salt Lake, where Salt Lake is like so convenient to the mountains. Like you've got so many major ski resorts, like 30, 45 minutes, whereas Denver is convenient in comparison to a lot of places, but it's still like, I-70 is a fucking nightmare, like an hour and a half away. And so I think a lot of people in Denver are super outdoorsy and similar vibes to the people that are living in the mountains. Whereas a lot of people that live here are more just like cosplaying being outdoorsy. And so they like the idea of like seeing the mountains. Sure. They're kind of good here.
That's literally us.
Oh, we're cosplaying.
No, but you're going to come out and actually.
Yes, absolutely.
But actually be in the mountains.
But I don't know how to ski, Sarah.
That's okay.
Well, we can
learn.
But also we can learn. Yeah, I'd love to go.
Or we could make like naked snow angels and take cute
pictures.
Obviously.
I'm always down to get naked. So that's great. Yeah, obviously. But also I think it's a good lesson like that I've learned in adulthood and living here is you don't have to be good at your hobbies. Like you could try things and be like the worst one. But if you're having fun, That's all that matters. Like it's allowed me to put my ego aside and try more things, because moving to the mountains where everyone's skied since like they were in diapers and are doing like triple backflips on the mountain, you know, I mean, I'm always the worst one and everyone's amazing, you know, everyone is so good. And it's humbled me to like learn more from people versus being like, oh God, like I can't keep up with them, or they go faster than me, or they're doing this and I can't do this. It's like more motivating of like, okay, like I'm going to try this, or I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to, I don't know, put myself in the situation. It's just like taught me that I can claim skiing as a hobby or any of these things. Like I love rock climbing. I've done it like 4 times, but I loved it when I did it. And I think I'd like it to be a hobby of mine if I did it more often, but I've definitely like, I don't know the lingo. I don't know what I'm talking about. And that barrier of entry can be kind of scary sometimes. And so I think being in the thick of it in the mountains too is nice, because you're like, I found myself often the one being like trying to encourage everyone to go do something, like, oh, let's go on this hike. Oh, let's do this thing. But out there, you're surrounded by everyone that's like that. So I can just follow along with people. Be like, oh, like instead of like going to this bar, let's go on a hike today, and then we can go drink after. It's like, okay, you know, and then I can just kind of follow along without having to always be the one perpetuating the adventure.
You know what I could be into? What is it when you have skis on but the backs are not attached and you're like hiking but they're
Touring.
skis? I could be down to do that.
Okay, but
Wait.
Have you ever skied before?
I skied one time when I was 13.
Are you saying you're not down to ski?
No, I'm down to ski, but
Because I was going to say, you do have to come down when you're done touring is the only thing.
It sounds like you're like very apprehensive about skiing.
Do you go cross country?
I am terrified of
Or
getting
snowshoe?
really hurt.
Yeah, that's so valid.
fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
I'm
get
just
it.
terrified.
I mean, ACL survivor over
Yeah.
here. I get it.
I got to dance on a glacier in Austria one time.
Oh,
and the
okay.
professor that I went with goes every other year. So she's like, hey, how are you? It's been a couple of years since I've seen you. How are things? And all of these Austrians who are living in the Alps are like, oh, Donna, I'm good, but I broke my hip skiing last year, or like just some crazy shit. And I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, the injuries are rough.
You don't have to go so hard. You could just stay on the greens, man.
I'd like that. Yeah,
You know,
I'd like that.
I can hang out with you and
Same.
be along until you learn to go to blue, and then you just keep going, you know?
But I love like touring. Like that's I started that last season and it's so fun.
What about it?
I like it's like type 5 fun. It's like so hard because you're like just hiking up the mountain.
Sure.
I've loved it because I mean, going back to the friend thing, like so many friendships that I made very loosely just through mutual friends, or like just from being in a small town and everyone kind of knowing everyone, got more intentional by like us having a shared hobby where you're literally like just walking or hiking and talking. So I feel like I've gotten deeper friendships from that, because I mean, you're together for like an hour and a half going uphill and putting all your equipment on at the base and all that. And so it's an easy way. I mean, similar to podcasting, where I wouldn't necessarily call this person up and have a heart to heart with them, but like if we're sitting across from each other or we're touring together, we have a lot of time. We might as well talk while we're going.
Sure.
And it's also that phenomenon, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, of like if you're sitting in a car, you're more likely to get deeper with someone and like have more intimate conversations than if you're sitting across a table, because you're not looking at each other. So you feel a little safer.
Interesting.
In some way. Yeah, it's a thing. And a lot of the men that I've dated that I told you about that were super apprehensive to having the "we're not really strangers" card game. Yeah. We'd be like on a road trip and I'd pull it out and be like, so I have this game.
Surprise.
Yeah,
you're stuck with me.
Yeah. 4 hours.
I've never heard of that, but that makes total sense. Maybe we should have a segment where we have our...
Don't look at each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you would love that.
You think?
Yes. You don't love like looking me in the face, because then you're like, why are you looking at me? I'm like, well, you're talking.
See, that's, yeah.
No, but that's
okay, but then maybe you could have like one of your Patreon episodes where you're looking that way.
That's a thing.
We can all just look forward like this.
That's also a hack for like new friendships. I listened to some interview where the person said like, I invite newer friendships or acquaintances to do things in which we are talking side by side instead of front to front. So like, let's go to a museum, or let's go observe this thing. Let's go on a walk. Let's go do something in which we're on the same plane.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting and unconventional hack.
But I think for us, I think that for me to do that would be to prolong or to reinforce a negative behavior.
Yeah, I think it would be good for you to look me in the face more often.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a practice.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, so Sarah, you've done like kind of a lot of big transitions in your life.
And you're only 29.
Only 29.
You're still in your 20s.
Ripe and young, baby.
I want to talk about, so you are the owner of Raw Rebellious, which is a really cool brand.
Thank you.
And you've had a lot of pivot points in entrepreneurship. We have a commonality where we have this thing that we went to school for. We have this like whole degree that we went to college for and like spent time and money pursuing. And then have like kind of built careers that don't involve that thing
At all.
Talk to me about that as a pivot point, but also that emotion tied with, I thought my life was going to turn out differently. Not that it's good or bad, but I had this vision forecasted for my life and like it's different.
Have you guys ever read The Midnight Library?
We have it. We got it at a book swap, but we haven't read it yet.
Oh,
It's right back here.
okay.
I love that author.
Move it to the top
Okay.
because this kind of has to do with what I'm gonna say.
Don't give it away. Don't
No, I won't.
I'm
I
just
won't.
kidding.
It's just like the premise of the book is because I'm not really much of a planner. So originally I was going to school for bilingual occupational therapy. My like loose goal was to take a year or two off from like in between grad school and college and go live abroad, get 100% fluent, bartend somewhere and like do that and then go back to school and become an OT. And I mean, the change of me like not using my degree, it never quite felt like this like decision that I was I'm gonna like really do this. I'm gonna pursue this. It was very much just naturally happened as I was in college and graduating and my jewelry was taking off and everything was just happening faster than I could really keep up. So it was never felt like I was like making that conscious decision to, okay, I'm going to completely pivot my life and do this other thing. Cause I was so young and I had no business experience. It was more like, okay, well, this is going well. So I'm just going to try it and see where it goes. But then after that, I remember struggling with like thinking about, like some of my friends in my Spanish major are living abroad and doing the thing that I thought I was going to do. And it was like not as much comparison, but just wistfulness of like, okay, I chose a certain path, which has given me so much, but also then it took away like this maybe life experience. And I'm visiting these friends that did that thing and like comparing myself to them or whatever that is. And what's interesting about The Midnight Library, which you should absolutely read, here we are always recommending books on the pod.
Download Storygraph while you're at it.
Yeah, no, truly, is it just talks about this woman who has regrets in her life and there are so many paths she could have taken. And it like in a mystical kind of way, without giving it away, like almost gives her the opportunity to experience each path that she's always like been so depressed on not taking and had regrets about. And she gets to experience them and be like, oh, like, so this is what this would have been like kind of thing. And it just shows you, and you know, whatever you believe. For me, I believe that there's past lives, future lives, you know, a million planes of existence, and any decision I make, like I believe in free will. And so I think that like, say I have two paths to choose. If I choose this path, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. I just feel like the universe almost like readjusts. Like I think of like a Connect 4 board, like kind of all falling out. Like everything kind of like readjusts and shifts to whatever decision I make. And then that ends up being my story. But if I'd gone another way, because it's not like if I had chose to move to Austin, then I would have like had a failed business and never met the guy that I was supposed to meet, or never made like I think then it just shifts and then your story kind of looks a little different until you make that next decision and then it shifts. Like I believe that the universe is always shifting in your favor and that just helps me with decisions. So coming back to how I felt about not using my major or not using like, or not doing what I thought I was going to do with my life, there was definitely a component of that when I was younger of like regret of, oh, I wish I could have had this. But then I always tried to shift it to like, okay, but now I'm like, you know, I own my own business. So I, you know, get to do whatever I want and I get to take vacation and I travel all the time, which like I wouldn't have been able to do if I was in grad school right now. And I mean, you know, but it's hard because of course we all have regrets and we all see other people living their lives and wonder what if, like, what would have happened.
Right. And had you have chosen the path to grad school, you may have always wondered, like, what if I went all in on Raw Rebellious? Like, what would have happened?
What about you?
I've actually never thought about it that way, but I totally align with the idea of like, there's kind of no right path. It's sort of like you can choose like long and short for some things. Like you're kind of going to reach a destination that you desire regardless of the choices that you make. And like
Sure.
some might just teach you longer lessons than others, but they're by no means wrong.
Right.
And yeah, kind of this idea that like you're learning the lessons that you're designed to learn. So like the universe is unfolding in exactly the way that it should.
Right.
Which sounds like super woo-woo and crazy to some people, but like again with the idea of like, but what if that were true? What do you have to lose to believe that you're the luckiest girl in the world?
Right. Exactly.
Like what do you have to lose literally?
Might as well believe it.
Might as well think
Or
you're the
try it.
luckiest person. Like diving deeper into Raw and Rebellious, you have this like entire community online. And Elliot and I talk a lot about like, blah, blah, here are all the ways that phones are bad. But like phones can be used for good ways. And like we can cultivate community online. We are also, as something more human, cultivating a community online. So I'm curious to hear more about like it's you, Sarah, answering DMs when people reach out. And it's like you being the face of the brand. I'm curious like how you see the positive sides of social media when it comes to like building the Raw and Rebellious community and what that journey has been like. You're 8 years deep.
Definitely like the long game. Like it takes a really long time. And when I think about like all the hours I've spent answering all the DMs and, you know, talking to people individually. And I remember during COVID, when I wasn't making any money through jewelry, I shifted to like making videos and showing people how to make their own jewelry and like how to kind of like start their own businesses. So like I think about the time that I've spent caring more so about like people feeling connected to me than trying to just sell them things. And I've, you know, the pendulum has swung too far in every direction where like, then after COVID, I kind of forgot that I was supposed to be selling people stuff for my business to thrive. And I like have almost lost my business multiple times just from losing myself or losing my way and focusing on the wrong things for too long. I don't have any business background, so I'm truly just learning as I go. But I think as far as positives that our phones give us and that technology, I mean, like everyone talks about is like, yes, it does take away the present and it takes away connection. And sometimes people forget how to have those face-to-face conversations and to communicate, but it also connects you in a way that we didn't have before. And so what I enjoy about it is like people feel like they know me to a degree. I call it like curated vulnerability. I don't share every single thing that I'm going through every single day because number one, that would be exhausting. Number two, if I was, you know, if I was time-lapsing myself on my laptop for 4 hours, no one wants to watch that. Like that's not entertaining. So how can I still be real and honest while showcasing my life in a way that people feel like they know me, people feel like they can understand and relate to, so that it's not too unattainable, but also not just too mundane, which is always a balance, I think, for a lot of creators.
Yeah.
And so what I appreciate from it is that people feel like they know me on such a deep level that then when I do these pop-ups and I do these events, like this event this past weekend, I mean, the amount of girls that I met that were like, I've been following you for 5 years. I've been following you for 2 years. Like, I love your Sunday Scaries. I love, like, I wore this hat and then I went home with a guy after, or I like, you know, me and all my friends listen to your podcast, or, you know, this podcast got me through my breakup, or I have, like you inspire me, or I admire you, or we've talked via DMs for 3 years. And like, then I see their photo and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like how's your new job? Or how's this? Like I can remember those things and recall those things. And I think that's my favorite part, is when it translates into the real life. And that's what my favorite part of pop-ups are, and like doing events. And I would love to do live podcasts at some point too. Like I really feel like I'm meant to do those in-person things. And I also love cultivating relationships amongst other people. So like connecting people through my community and then them forming their own friendships without me even needing to be there. So I would say, you know, just like anything else, it's all in moderation, right? I think the phones give us incredible connectivity and the ability to connect over broad spaces, and is the reason that I have my business. But I also think that, you know, in moderation, like social media can also be incredibly evil and can be really toxic just depending on how you consume it. And so as a first generation to go through all of this, we're all just kind of learning together, like where our limits are, having to put our phone on airplane mode or leave it at home when we go for a walk outside. I mean, you're having to really inconvenience yourself to shut it down and turn it off. And I think that's just our new norm and navigating what that looks like.
Sarah,
You have 3 questions.
I do.
You have 3 questions that I've heard you talk about on your podcast, and I wanted to talk about it here.
Okay.
For the sake of like attention span, intangibility, and like real logistical 3-dimensional hour time.
Right, of course.
Let's like speed round.
Right.
But I challenge you listeners, audience members, like pause the episode so you can play along.
I swear it's worth it.
And do this with your friends.
Here we go.
So here's how it's going to work.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions, okay? They're very simple.
Okay.
And you're going to give me an answer, and then you're going to tell me why you picked the answer.
Ooh.
And then at the end, I'll tell you kind of the meaning behind it. And normally, if you're listening at home, it'd be best if you could write it down kind of as you go, because then it's more meaningful for you to like really read what you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Write down your favorite color. And then for time's sake, you can do 1 to 3 reasons. 1 to 3 reasons why. And don't make it, because I like it. Like, get a little more descriptive than that. And you could, just do 1 to 3, as many as you have time to do. At home, do 3, but for y'all, however long.
I've got 1.
Okay.
Okay, I have one.
Did you type it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next thing is an animal.
That we like?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Well, like an animal, and just say why you picked the animal, or like why you like the animal. And again, try to keep them like descriptive. The last one is, what is your favorite like form of water? Like it could be a body of water, like an ocean or a lake. It could be ice. It could be rain. It could be clouds. It could be a specific, like maybe there's a lake or an ocean from where you're from that's really nostalgic to you. And then give 3 reasons, 1 to 3 reasons why you picked that.
Boom.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Where you wrote your favorite color, you're going to cross that out and write self, like myself. So this is the view that you have of yourself. So you can each tell me what you put as your favorite color.
Okay.
And then the reasons that you gave for your favorite color.
You start.
I said navy blue because I feel most confident in that color.
Okay.
Okay, I put lavender or periwinkle, like I love your toenails.
Thank you.
Because like when you take a sip of something that you love, like that, like McDonald's Dr. Pepper's first sip, and you just get a smile on your face, that's how I feel about that color. Like it makes me feel bubbly. Okay.
So what that means then is like your perception of self, like how you view yourself. So maybe, you could get deeper in that. And that's why I said like 1 to 3 answers. Like maybe that's how you feel like others perceive you, or you make other people feel, or maybe that's how you maybe that's how you hope to be perceived, or maybe that's something that you're really confident in, or something that you're lacking that you're trying to work on. And you can, kind of think on that answer however you feel like it relates to you. Like for mine, I put sky blue, and I said, mine were like, I was also very high when I did this the first time. So mine are like a little crazy, but I said it was the first thing that popped into my head, which led me to believe it's true because of my subconscious, which leads me to feel proud and grounded for noticing my intuition. That kind of blue could also remind me of the ocean, which is super calming, and a blue sky at the beach, which leads me to feel calm and relaxed. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe I like people relax in my presence or feel calm, or
Bedtime Story podcast is in your future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, calm app, call me. And then like the subconscious thing is like, okay, well, I consider myself like I'm always chasing my intuition and trying to listen to myself and all that. And then I said, because it reminds me of skiing on a bluebird day, and blue in the sky looks extra bright next to the snow, which leads me to feel strong and just incredibly elated and free and young. And I always feel very like young and like, a kid at heart, like we talked about earlier. So maybe that there's a million ways you could, interpret it. And so the deeper you go into it,
I love it,
the cooler it is.
Yeah, I really, really like that.
Your favorite animal is your perfect mate. So it's like your perfect match.
I can't wait to hear what you wrote.
I'm kind of confused about that. So I'll just say it, and then you can explain.
Yes.
I put raccoon because
okay. Trash panda.
Because as a child, it was always my favorite animal, but I don't even know why. And so like thinking about my favorite animal, I don't really have one. And I always go back to a raccoon because it was my favorite growing up. And it just reminds me of being a kid. And I had good memories of my childhood. Like when I think of a raccoon, I think of like camping. And for some reason, I loved raccoons. But even then, I didn't even know why. Like going to school and be like, oh, your favorite animal. And I was like, I don't really know why it's a raccoon. I don't even see them that often. I don't even really see them that often, but like, exactly. I haven't really talked about it, but
maybe it's because your perfect mate loves your inner child, which I feel like I do.
okay. I see how we're connecting it now. Okay.
Well, and I was thinking like maybe Sam makes you feel more like jubilant and like young, and that nostalgia, which you talked about being nostalgic, maybe that reminds you of something fond from like growing up or feeling nurtured, and you are craving that or feel that with your partner.
That's exactly what I was like. I wrote that because, well, the end I put out, it reminds me of being a kid, and I have great memories of my childhood.
Exactly.
And so I think that you have, you do that. You do it because, first of all, you're younger than me. So I feel younger with you. What's yours?
Okay, mine, I didn't like think too hard about it. I just put dogs because I'm a dog person. Okay. And I said because they're so loving and intuitive and cuddly.
Okay.
And I love to be cuddled. And
do you feel like you're cuddly towards...
I feel like I could be better.
Okay.
I feel like we were really cuddly last night.
We were so cuddly.
That's
also,
amazing.
You're also incredibly intuitive.
And maybe that's what you're like craving. Like it could be like what you want out of your partner too, like what you hope. So like you love feeling nurtured and like cuddled and held. And it's also nostalgic to you too. I mean, you love dogs and you said you've always been a dog person. So maybe there's a part of that aspect as well.
Totally.
What about you?
Mine was cats. And I said nostalgia. Always had cats growing up. So it feels safe and sweet. Comfort. My cats and nice cats that I've met are always so cuddly and purr and cute and want to snuggle you. And elegant, the way cats move and sulk and hunt and have so many different variations. Sick as fuck.
Amazing.
So,
I love cats too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with cats. So probably the nostalgic piece, like feeling safe, is something I always crave in a relationship. And I'm so physical touch. So like I love that like cuddling and snuggling and like just like touching. I don't really know, like elegant, like maybe like athletic or
yeah. I'm getting like
coordinated.
I'm getting like diversity. Like they can be like soft and sweet and cuddly, but they could also be like
independent,
hunters. Yeah.
Rare.
Love that. ASMR.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then the last one is for the body of water is your sexuality.
What did you look at me like that for?
Because you were like,
because I think that mine's funny.
Oh, okay. What is it?
I just put Evian bottled water.
And what was your reasoning?
but then I said, but on the real, the pool in my childhood backyard.
Oh,
okay.
And that was just because, again, here goes nostalgia, like safety. It's like a formidable time in my life where I like spent so much time with my friends. Also, like that was before I had a skin thing, and like now I don't spend any time in the pool. I don't really spend time outside, like in the bare sun. But before I did,
okay,
and I didn't have any worries about like the sun.
Okay,
so it's like innocence maybe, but also just like my backyard, my family having all the barbecues that are now gone forever. Like our families have grown up, everyone's moved away. So it's like just safety, nostalgia, like joy, peace, friends,
and like exposure in a safe way.
For
like,
sure.
When you're having sex, you're literally naked and the most exposed you could possibly be.
That's interesting.
So maybe feeling like safe, like sexually with that person because it's like such a deep, intimate connection and experience.
Totally.
Like that's the precursor.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like
present.
Not getting too literal, but like, when you're in the pool, like you have less articles of clothing on.
No, exactly.
So like I haven't started taking off all of my clothes in front of you until like a couple of years ago. Like that's how self-conscious I was about like my body or my skin or whatever. And so only in the last couple of years do I like walk around the house naked. So.
And she's like, hell yeah.
I like it. I'm here for
like,
it.
I would hope so.
Okay, this is interesting. Mine, I put rain.
Okay.
Oh.
Specifically because of petrichor, which is like the smell of wet concrete.
Oh. Petrichor. Okay.
So
I put
word.
like fresh, clean, meditative, restorative, and like grounded.
Okay. So maybe sex is a way to experience stillness in the sense that there's like no distractions. Like you like to be honed in the experience.
Totally.
And it's like a more like mindful spiritual experience for you as it is a very spiritual experience, I would say.
Oh, that's good. I like that. What's yours?
Mine is snow.
Oh.
I said, because I love skiing so much, I feel so present and happy and close to nature in the mountains, and it allows me to do fun things. It's peaceful and quiet when it falls, and there's a stillness. because it's so fluffy and beautiful and otherworldly. It also sometimes makes the night sky lighter when there's a storm, which is curious. So kind of all over the place, but I feel like mine was like the nature piece is like, us in our rawest form, same what you were saying with feeling exposed. It's like you are like in literally your birthday suit, like you're totally naked and like exposed to that other person. And it allows me to do fun things. It like allows you to experiment kind of. And like when you're comfortable with your partner, getting to like, try new things and be a little more exotic, or, see what you like and explore yourself and your body. And it's peaceful and quiet, similar thing. Like you're so in the moment when you're having sex. And then the piece that I wrote about like when there's a storm, the night sky is lighter, which is curious. Like the fact that I wrote curious, maybe like, because I'm so physical touch and I'm very like sex positive. Like I'll talk about sex and I'm like a very curious person. So like exploring that with someone that you feel safe with, maybe.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love this exercise.
It was
as
so
soon as
fun,
I heard
right?
it, I was like, we have to do this.
Yes.
And it's just like going back to like the power of a question.
Right.
And like this very simple way of like gamifying questions and like formatting them in a specific way and building on each one.
Right.
That sort of opens up this like entire other universe with just simple
Right.
like, what's your favorite color? Like that could be like, that really that's the best you have, but like extrapolating and going on, like that's fucking cool. And it's free.
Well, and then you have your guard down. And so you're just answering it freely. And then you can really delve into it after the fact and like cause more conversation.
Totally. Sarah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
So much fun. We've been together for like 6 hours.
I know.
It's flown by.
It feels like an hour. Like I wish I could stay longer. This has been so freaking fun.
I think we could probably do this for like multiple days. Straight.
200%. And listen to their episode on my podcast, Raw Intentions.
Yeah, we're going to put all the links in the bottom and
fabulous
shirts, hats, candles.
Love. All
your
the things.
show, your Instagram, so people can just stay in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.